All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. Today we have a special guest. We're joined with Benjamin Brandt. Benjamin is a certified financial planner and founder of Capital City Wealth Management, based out of Bismarck, North Dakota, and is also the host of the popular podcast Retirement Starts Today Radio. Super excited to jump in. We're going to cover a few topics, kind of different retirement planning items here. But Ben, thanks so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to you if you want to share anything about yourself, what you do.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. I'm a financial advisor, podcaster, YouTuber, and I've been podcasting since 2015. I've been YouTubing since about this time last year. Very unique experiences, uniquely different. Share some similarities, I suppose. But yeah, I've been a financial advisor for almost 20 years, focusing pretty much exclusively on retirement income planning. So serve a lot of engineers and teach people how to live out their savings. We serve a lot of super savers, which I identify as people that have saved over $1 million. And one of the most interesting things about that is that the same brain it takes to save up $1 million is not the same brain you need to spend it in a way that feels good. So spend a lot of time talking about the non-numbers part of retirement planning.
Yeah, no, I love that about your content there. Retirement planning goes well beyond just managing an investment portfolio, right? There's so much more to it. Yeah, and we're going to get into some of that here. I guess I'll preface this conversation with this is not investment, legal, or tax advice. Just a couple of CFPs talking through some topics here, some things to consider. And I think to kick it off, Ben, I always like to think there's many tools that we have in our tool belt to kind of counter market risk and volatility and deal with the ups and downs. And two of those tools are rebalancing and diversification. And I want to start with
I've heard of both of those.
yeah, yeah. So I want to start with rebalancing. And what I find, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is in the retirement planning or I guess financial advising space, maybe as a whole, there's sort of an art as opposed to a science, and there's a lot of opinions and compelling arguments that can be made for doing this or versus doing that, and you can see that in rebalancing as far as frequency, right? And I don't think there's a right or wrong to the frequency. There might be some more advantageous versus less advantageous approaches, but if you want to touch a little bit about rebalancing, the importance of it, and where you kind of land on the frequency.
Yeah, we in retirement, I really want people to pursue a minimum effective dose of complexity. You're retired. We want you having fun. The first 10 years of your retirement are the shiniest of your golden years, as I see it. And I think there's a lot better ways to spend your time and your money versus staring at a computer monitor. So we want to rebalance. We know that's important, but we don't want to do it daily. That would be kind of ridiculous. For my own money and for my clients' money, and what I talk about on YouTube and the podcast is every 6 months. If you're retired and you're living off of your savings, your mailbox money is, probably the first of the month. It comes from your money market account in your IRA directly to your checking account. And so every month that we take money out, we're naturally unwinding our portfolio. We're unbalancing our portfolio. So then we have to rebalance every 6 months to kind of refill that cash bucket. Something like 70% of the time the market is up. So 70% of the time we're living off of stock gains indirectly, 6 months at a time, through our rebalancing process. Now, if something like 2022 happens where both stocks and bonds go down at the same time, we saw that a little bit in COVID. We saw that in most market shocks, we'll see stocks and bonds both go down. But generally speaking, stocks are good, bonds are bad, bonds are good, stocks are bad. They have this kind of inverse relationship. But something like 2022 happens and they're both bad. Then we have, short-term treasuries, we have money market, we have short-term, intermediate-term government bonds, things like that, corporate bonds. So sometimes we wouldn't rebalance back to the tolerances of the portfolio. We would just work our way backwards through the risk spectrum. So we'd sell our money market, and I don't want to rebalance yet, so I'm going to sell my short-term government securities, and I don't want to rebalance yet, I'm going to sell my short-term corporate securities. I'm going to, intermediate and long-term, I'm going to work my way backwards through the risk spectrum. 99% of the time I'm just rebalancing, and it's mostly passive, and so I just think about it twice a year. Every decade or so when something crazy happens, I'm working my way backwards. So not that we're trying to predict the future, because we can't do that, Or at least I can't. Maybe they can do that in Hawaii. My crystal ball works as good as the next guy's. We want to give ourselves as many opportunities to be right as we can. So that's what we're trying to achieve with owning the entire market. You can do it incredibly inexpensively. I don't know. You've probably been an advisor for as long as I have. Investing is as close to free as it's ever been. The expense ratio on a portfolio can be like a tenth of a percent. It's so incredibly inexpensive. So we want it super passive, super cheap, and super hands off because we want you having fun, not stuck to your computer monitor.
Yeah, I love that. And I equate a lot of things to like the fitness realm where it's like what exercises should I be doing? Well, find ones that you like and that you're going to stick with and you know that you're going to be consistent with. And I think the same holds true with rebalancing. If you know, whether that's every 6 months, every quarter, every year, find what works, right? And what system works for you. And then also, I love your point there about, you know, 2022. Don't be dogmatic. Just because you set up systems in place here doesn't mean, you know, you can't deviate that from that plan, you know, and make course adjustments along the way, right?
Sure. Well, in the same vein, sometimes we can get lucky too. I mean, we don't want to market time, but sometimes we will rebalance just because it's the time of the calendar that says rebalance, and then the market will go down 15% the week after we rebalance. Well, we can rebalance again, and
Right, right.
now we can feed our stocks that are down with our, I call it the retirement runway, right? How long of a runway of cash burn have you built? Well, if I just rebalance and I've got a full money market account and all my bond funds are full, and the stock market's now down 10, 15%, well, I can rebalance again and buy the dip. Now, you're not always going to get lucky that way, and we don't want to market time, but sometimes, better lucky than good, they say.
Sure. Okay, so let's move to the next one there, diversification. And kind of where I want to come at this angle is I've had a couple of conversations recently with, let's take NUA out of the picture here, but people who have, um, you know, maybe they bought some of the Mag 7 stocks early on or years ago, right? And so now they have this somewhat concentrated. It doesn't have to be super concentrated, but they have all these gains in maybe these shares of these, you know, well-known companies that they've held on to, and they've done so well that there's an emotional attachment. This is a great thing for them, right? I love this. And now they're approaching that retirement phase, and it comes time to, you know, have that conversation about maybe diversifying out of that position, which is really hard because you're asking somebody who's done really well holding these stocks, and you try to have this conversation of diversifying it out for reasons of, you know, turning your portfolio into more of a manageable distribution portfolio, let's say. Um, and it's an interesting conversation to have with clients who have those, or just individuals who have those a lot of gains in the stocks that they bought a long time ago. What are your thoughts on different things to consider about maybe how to um, you know, systematically sell your way out of those shares, or how to incorporate that, or how to have those conversations?
So are we talking about like a brokerage account where
Yeah,
there's some
sorry.
tax consequence to
Yes,
unwinding this? Okay. Because there's the
exactly. Yes.
psychological too. Even if it's an IRA, we could sell it for no tax consequence. There's still, I prefer to see that green number in my account that says I was really smart 9 years ago and it's up 600%, right? Even if
Right.
there's no tax consequence, it feels good to have that versus, Jim's index fund incorporated where I'm going to sell it and it's going to go down the next day, of course, because I bought it. It's going to be minus zero point 0.3 when I'm used to seeing plus 300.
Right,
So
right.
there's a psychological thing that if I made a smart choice 3 years ago or 30 years ago, granted, maybe it hasn't kept up with the S&P for the last 3 years, but it still says plus 300 or plus 400. Like I feel good about that. I'm guilty of that myself. But when we think taxes, you do want to unwind this over a number of years, probably, unless your entire retirement is in one stock. The only thing the only thing worse than losing money is watching a gain turn into a loss. I mean, you kind of lose twice, psychologically. Um, and then no amount of taxes. I mean, you don't pay taxes on losses, right? I mean, so you know, if any gain is a good gain, we don't want a gain to turn into a loss just because we were scared to pay taxes on. That's and a lesson I have to tell myself all the time, and a lesson we have to tell clients. So what I would recommend if you're approaching retirement, or if you're in retirement, you've got a situation where we got some significant tax gains in something. You want to have, in the same way in March and April, we have a tax prep meeting where we're getting ready to file our taxes for the year. Well, I want you to have that same meeting, but in like November of the year, so that you can look at your taxes and you can say, here's what I think my tax impact for the year is going to be. And I've got some amount of income that I could realize, and I could be within this marginal bracket threshold or this IRMA threshold or this phase out or wherever I'm trying to be in the taxes. So my spending income, what I'm spending, is a different number than where I want my income to be for taxes.
Mhm.
And the number that I make up the most often is 80,000. So I've got $80,000 worth of something that I can do in my portfolio because I'm trying to maximize my lifetime tax efficiency. I always say our number one advantage over the IRS is the IRS looks in single individual years, whereas retired taxpayers, we can look in terms of decades. We can look in terms of married filing jointly to then switching to single filer status because we start retirement as Creedence Clearwater Revival and we end retirement as John Fogerty, sadly, or Destiny's Child and Beyonce if you're a little bit younger. And then we can also manage multi-generational for our kids too. So we're trying to, IRS looks 1 year at a time. We can look decades or not, or generations. So take the 80,000. What's the best use of this 80,000 of additional income that I could take? Well, maybe I harvest some gains. I can harvest 80,000 worth of gains before I move from 15 to 20 long-term capital gains or until my whatever it is. Social Security, that's too much for Social Security, but there's all kinds of different variables. And so I look at that and say, okay, maybe I should do an $80,000 Roth conversion, or maybe I should do, harvest 80,000 worth of gains and then pay that extra on my house. There's probably a dozen different things that you and I could brainstorm about to use that money for. But this would just be an example of at the end of the year, I look at how much room I have to wherever I want to be, and then I can unwind things. And that is with the caveat, if 100% of your retirement is based on one stock and it's gone up significantly and hasn't gone down in a long time, someone would say that means we're due. I don't want to jeopardize your retirement based on that. So then we're just going to pay some taxes and we're going to be thankful that we paid taxes because that means we made money as opposed to the alternative, which is a lot less fun. And we're just going to pay the taxes. So we're going to thread the needle between, I don't want this whole thing to jeopardize your retirement, but I also don't want to get killed in taxes. We're going to find where that happy medium is. And that's where it's really beneficial to have an unbiased third party like you. It's great because you can tell me things and be more objective about my money than I am. And also, you don't have to pay the taxes on it. I do. So you can tell me things that I might not want to hear. Unfortunately, I have to pay the taxes, but that's really the benefit of having an advisor like this semi-impartial, objective person that can tell me what to do.
Yeah, 100%. Love everything you said there. And then yeah, I mean, I didn't add this to the question, but I mean there is so if somebody is planning for an inheritance, obviously there'd be step up in basis and you could maybe position some of these holdings that have all these gains in a way for the satisfying inheritance, get the step up in basis. Um yeah, I love everything there. So let's talk so you and I both work a lot in the retirement planning space, right? Which is I wouldn't call it a niche, but it's a specific area of the broader, financial planning world there. So when we're talking retirement planning, at what point does it make sense for an individual? They're working, they're climbing up the corporate ladder, they're saving money away, they're in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. At what ages do you think it really makes sense to start to sit down and map things out, whether that's on their own or to sit down with somebody? Is there a have you come across sort of a law of averages of where people fall in the best time to start mapping this out?
Well, I don't know if there's a best time. It reminds me of two things. When's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? When's the second best time to plant a tree right now? But the thing that's always stuck with me, I've recorded almost 500 episodes of my podcast, Retirement Starts Today. And one of the first people I ever interviewed was, I forget his name, but he was essentially a job coach for people over the age of 50. Maybe they were making a pivot to being a business owner or whatever it is. He was essentially an over 50 job coach. And the thing that he told me that I'll never forget is he said, if you find yourself unemployed after age 50, you're retired, you just don't know it yet. Meaning that age discrimination is illegal, but fully legal. While it's illegal, but age discrimination, we're not supposed to do that, but it happens enough that you would definitely notice. And so if we find ourselves in a position that we are involuntarily retired, we will have wished we had a plan. And so I don't know if I could put an exact date on it, ideally 5 years before you're retired. But if your retirement isn't wholly under your control, you don't know when that's going to be. So if you have an amount of money that you care about and you have a distance to retirement that feels close but isn't fully in your grasp, under your control, that's when we should do it.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is, and I'm sure you've come across this too, where there's a lot of instances of people who they wait until, okay, I filed my paperwork, I'm retired, now I'm going to figure this out. And if you wait till the point of when you were retired, everybody's situation is different. Maybe you missed out on a lot of planning opportunities, maybe you didn't. But but more often than not, there's probably some things you could have done leading up as far as positioning assets and maybe doing some conversions. Uh, Deciding to map things out now that you are retired, you can leave a lot of meat on the bone. Don't you agree?
That is interesting. Yeah, I visit with retirees every week. I assume I will do that until 10 minutes after I'm dead. It's just something that I've always done and always want to continue to do. And it always surprises me that some people will call me and they'll be like, I'm going to retire in 11 years. And some people call me up and said, I retired last month. And here's what I got. And everybody in between. And no shade, no judgment. It just sometimes surprises me. There's a lot of work we can do, financial and non-financial, on the run up to retirement. You know, there's a certain, do you play golf?
A little bit.
I don't play golf. I think I'm the only guy in personal finance in the retirement space that doesn't play golf. And I think a lot of people play golf because that's what they think they're supposed to do. They show up on day one of retirement and they kind of look around and like, I can only watch so many reruns of The Price is Right. I got to do something. And then I guess it's golf, right? The energy of I gave up my job to do this is very different. It's like all of your eggs in one basket. It's like I quit my job to do this, and it's not really what I thought it would be. There's some buyer's remorse to that. But if we can get a few years on the front side of retirement, there's a lot of behavioral detective work that we can do, particularly around your current career. Through the lens of financial independence, we can say, what parts of your life do we want to keep? And now that we're financially independent, what parts do we want to get rid of? And if we wait until retirement to figure that out, well, we kind of have the cards that we've been dealt. But if we're a few years ahead of retirement, we can start to sort these things out better and we can make small commitments of time, money, or energy to gather data to find out what we like and what we don't like. And obviously we do more of the things we like and less of the things that we don't like. That's 3 years before retirement. We can spend the long weekends and we can spend the holidays gathering this data and trying to figure out what am I returning to rather than returning from. If we just wait till we're retired to have that conversation with our spouse or with ourselves or with our advisor, we've fully retired from something and we didn't do any of the algebra of retiring to something. And that's why I think everybody golfs because it's like, oh, I'm here. I guess I'm a golfer now. So since I don't like golf, I had to go figure this out separately from that. So
Yeah, I
I'll
love it.
drive the cart and drink all the beer and smoke all those
That's
cigars, but don't ask me to swing at anything.
that's it. I love it. That's me too. I chase around the ball. I'm not good at it. It's it's more of just a social thing. Drink some beers, hang out. I'm here in Hawaii, Ben, so there's a plethora of amazing golf courses. You could just drive the cart and enjoy, have a good time looking around. So
I've never been to Hawaii, but I have seen Moana. So I assume you just hit balls from the volcano directly into the ocean. I know nothing about Hawaii or
that's right.
geography or
That's right. Um, okay, so let's stick on that lifestyle portion that you kind of mentioned here about planning what you're retiring to here. The concept of transitioning into retirement with a part-time job. And let's stick with golf. Let's say you're a golfer and you want to start retirement, you don't know what you're going to do. You don't have hobbies per se. I mean, you have interests, but and you have more than enough money in retirement. But you look at getting a part-time job, maybe as the I don't know what they call the person who like checks you in at the golf course or whatever. And it's more about I'm going to be social. I got something to wake up to. It'll help with the psychology around still having a paycheck, even if it's a lot less than they were making before. And I think there's a lot of pros to transitioning into a part-time job. Uh, but I don't want to oversell it because there's some cons as well. Maybe you enter retirement and you're thinking, well, I want to travel a lot. Now you're tied to this part-time job. I don't know what their vacation policy is, this and that. or you're used to being, yourself as this maybe this top manager, and it's hard for you to kind of step down into this, whatever this golf position is. What are your thoughts on transitioning into retirement with a part-time job?
It can be tricky. You're used to bossing around 20-year-olds and then, you retire and now a 20-year-old's bossing you around potentially. That could be a little bit of a smack to the ego, but there's many ways to do this. What you mentioned, the paycheck, there's a lot of research that says, you know, it's easier to spend a pension dollar or an earned wage dollar or an annuity dollar or a social security dollar versus a portfolio dollar. 100% of every automated pensions type dollar gets spent versus, if the market is down, it's easy to not take that vacation because you don't want to take it out of your portfolio. So there, if your goal is to spend confidently, earned income is a great way to do that. There's no psychology that goes along with it that would be working against us. The money shows up because I earned it and I can spend it. I don't give it a second thought. Versus there can be a learning curve to living off of your portfolio. It can feel strange when you've been putting money in every other week for 40 years. Now I'm taking money out every month.
Mhm.
That can be a learning curve. So there are some psychological benefits to part-time work. I think that if I could give just one piece of retirement advice to everybody, in an ideal situation, what we're trying to create in retirement is I want to be drawn forward by my compelling future rather than propelled by my past. So just because you were a teacher for the last 30 years doesn't mean that needs to be part of your identity going forward. We want to create something where we're drawn forward by our future. We're excited to get out of bed in the morning. And so if that's part-time work or if that's consulting or volunteering or a phase in or a phase out or something, there's a successful retirement using every example that you can think of. It's just how much energy and data gathering have we done to retire to something rather than from something, right? To create that compelling future rather than, you know, watching the People's Court reruns and then visiting my doctor 4 times a week because I've got nothing better to do, um,
Sure.
which people do. If you've been to a hospital recently, I mean, there's a, yeah, that's some, when you're super old, that's, I guess, part of your social schedule is you just go to the doctor every single day. But that's not the retirement I want. Maybe if
Right,
I'm
right.
unlucky, that's what I'll get if I have health concerns. But yeah, spend the time to create that compelling future, and I think the other chips will sort themselves out. So I don't know if I have strong feelings about do or don't part-time work. Part of that comes from I don't ever see a scenario where I would fully retire myself. I think I'm as retired now as I ever will be, and I think a lot of people in our retirement space kind of feel that way. I am financially independent, luckily, but so I don't really have strong feelings about pros and cons of part-time work, but in service to what? Do we have to do it financially? Are there ways to accomplish that without the financial component? Because that might give us some more flexibility. But yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, it doesn't have to be a part-time job. Maybe it's volunteering for, the local whatever, hiking club or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of ways to approach it. Ton of ways to approach it. Everybody's got their own needs and wants and how they view their retirement. Yeah, just a lot of ways to slice it up. Okay, so let's talk about Social Security. Now, I'm a huge fan of steady, secure, lifetime income. Going back to psychology, it just goes a long way knowing that every month this is coming in versus taking a distribution from a portfolio and possibly seeing your portfolio balance drop. Um, so I have opinions on this, but again, I'm flexible. I'm not dogmatic. Everybody's situation is different. I just want to get your take. So you could make the case if you're looking at things from an optimized perspective, right? We're trying to hyper optimize things. Uh, One, you could say delay Social Security till age 70. You get the most bang for your buck, lifetime income. You have the survivor benefits that come along with that. That's a great approach. You can also make a compelling case through the math, right? Not through actually living it, but through the math of um, claiming Social Security early and letting your investments run, letting the portfolio run as opposed to drawing down. Now, obviously, in this scenario, we're saying you need to pull one or the other lever here. Uh, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I want you to understand how to maximize your plan, but not be wholly dogmatic. We're solving for lumpy cash flows. We've got, I mean, you could trace it out for any client and you could probably have 5 to 12 different times when your income is going to change, right? We have, you know, switch from full-time to part-time for spouse A and then for spouse B and then full retirement for A and B and then Medicare for A and B and then Social Security for A and B and the kids move out and the house is paid off and there could be a dozen different times we're changing our income. So we have lumpy cash flows, but we have our portfolio and our Social Security and maybe pension, what have you.
Hmm.
So the portfolio's job, as I see it, is to iron out those lumpy cash flows. And so we understand where we want to be and what like the absolute perfect plan would be for Social Security if we look at survivorship and it's all in the Monte Carlo, blah, blah, blah. Life's probably not going to play out exactly that way. So when people say, when should I collect Social Security? I say, well, whatever gets us those linear cash flows and gets you to spend more money in the first 10 years of retirement, because that's what we want to do. Social Security helps us with the back end, right? And survivorship. And so we might say, okay, for the higher earning spouse, we want you to wait until age 70. And for the non-higher earning spouse, the lower earning spouse, that's our first pressure release valve that we can turn on whenever the market stops cooperating or starts being uncooperative. And so we use retirement income guardrails, which means we move your income with your portfolio, and our Social Security benefits stand as a plan B. So plan A would be you're going to collect Social Security at 70. We're going to live off of your portfolio until then. But plan A doesn't always go perfectly. And at age 68 and a half, the market has a significant downturn and it says, well, our plan says we need to reduce our income. Or we can reach for the ace up our sleeve, which is our deferred Social Security. So we recognize that the absolute perfect maximized Social Security check is age 70, but we turn it on at 68 and a half because our number one goal isn't the perfectly optimized Social Security benefit. Our number one goal is I want linear cash flows. I don't want to wait another 18 months and not take that cruise or not take my kid to Disney or grandkid or whatever. I'm saying those goals are more important than the perfectly optimized Social Security check. So I'm going to take it at 68. My plan is to wait until 70. If the market's cooperative, if they don't, I'm willing to claim sooner because my cash flow is more important than the perfectly optimized Social Security check. So if we're looking at a couple, the smaller benefit we turn on when the portfolio says we should reduce our income, and the second one comes on the next time it says we should reduce our income. And so by combining those two, we're probably having better cash flows. We can beat the pants off of the 4% safe withdrawal rule, and we're getting fully or at least mostly optimized Social Security benefits. So when people say, when should I collect? I'm sure there's some sort of software we could say, 15 minutes after your 67th half birthday would be the exact perfect time to turn this on.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. But really, I want to combine the two. That gets you the most income, the first 10 years of retirement, and we're optimizing for survivor benefits, especially if there's a discrepancy between age between spouses or incomes. And oftentimes there's one or the other or both. So that's my vague answer. There's no magic number, I think. It's just a matter of we understand what the perfect plan would be and understand that the timeline of the perfect plan is probably not going to happen. And if you end up claiming 6 months or 18 months before the absolute perfect time, it's not going to hurt you any.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for those optimizers out there, a lot of them are maybe the engineering type. Uh, you know, if you optimize too much, you can find yourself kind of chasing your own tail, and you're really splitting your hairs when you're looking at, like you said, we don't know, life expectancy. We don't know a lot of variables, and you're trying to maximize and optimize something that probably won't be substantial in the grand scheme of things. And I know that's probably not what somebody working with a retirement planner wants to hear. They want to maximize every penny, right? I want to die with zero. I want to pay zero taxes. Optimize, optimize, optimize. But I do find there are some people who can get kind of caught up in uh, looking at average returns and how can I stretch every dollar. And I think I heard you mention this recently on your show, the conversation about paying off a mortgage, a low interest rate mortgage. There's nothing optimized about paying off a mortgage that's at, 3%, 2.75%. But we can't let optimization kind of steal the show in many cases, right?
Yeah, I would say through the lens of financial independence, you've earned the right to disobey some of the rules. You can write your own rules. So yeah, the mortgage is the perfect example. I think renting in retirement is another example. Yes, if we line up 10 financial experts, nine and a half of them are going to say, don't pay off your 3% mortgage. We can beat that in the market. But if you have earned the right through a written plan and through financial independence, if your mortgage is $200,000 and we can prove that you've got more than $200,000 of surplus portfolio, thinking, keeping taxes in mind and all that, you should pay off your house, even though the math says you shouldn't pay off a 3% liability with a 7% asset, right? Well, guess what? I've earned the right to ignore that math. I will sleep better at night if I don't have a mortgage, and I've saved up the right to do so. I'm not entitled. I have earned the right to ignore your math, and then we go do that. Same thing with renting in retirement. Gosh, if I'm going to spend more than 6.5 years in Phoenix, more than 3 months out of the year, and uh, all these things, I'm throwing away money by renting. Well, you've earned the right to throw away money. If you don't want to be tied down to a specific property or you don't want to deal with any maintenance and you don't care that you're not building equity, and this is a lot of retirees, generationally, with baby boomers, this is almost, verboten, but we're seeing that less with Gen X. It's like, I don't want to be tied down to a specific property. I want low maintenance. I'm totally fine renting. And in fact, in many cases, renting now, the housing market has changed. Renting can be cheaper than the mortgage for a lot of time when we were at 3-4%, it was about the same. So I might as well buy the house because it's the same payment or sometimes cheaper. Well, it's the other way now. It's cheaper to rent. So throw away that money. Again, don't do it blindly. Please prove everything out through a written financial plan. But if you're financially independent, you have earned the right, and we can prove it out that you can write your own rules. You don't have to have the perfectly optimized plan anymore. We
Yeah.
probably did. That's how we got to where we're at. But now we can rewrite some of the rules.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, don't be dogmatic, right? I mean, it's and everybody there is a lot of circumstantial, everybody's different, as you talk through a lot of this stuff. Let's shift gears to
That's why we call it personal finance, not everybody finance.
that's right. I love that.
Yeah.
So let's say how would you approach let's do an example. We have a couple, one worked for the federal, maybe they both work for the federal government. They both have nice big pensions and they got Social Security and it's not common, but it's not uncommon. They have all of their sort of living expenses and their enjoyment, they're living their best lives covered with pensions and Social Security. But they also have this retirement portfolio in their TSP or whatever it might be. What kind of things, what kind of conversations or kind of points would you talk to them about uh, things to consider with that portfolio now, right? Because they're saying, "Well, I'm living my best life. We're good. I got this TSP over here, and I don't know, I don't need it. We're good." What kind of things would you consider there?
Yeah, the first thing I would recommend is reading the book Die with Zero. You don't have to implement a plan that specifically makes sure you die with zero. I mean, he would say if you want to die with zero, you put everything in a single premium immediate annuity and then you'll die with literally zero. That's not exactly what I would do. But the principles I think are sound. Whatever it is that you're planning on doing with the money at the end of your life, super savers tend to raise super savers, although sometimes it skips a generation. So that $500,000 that you're going to leave your kid, you've got $1 million in your account right now, and it's, you've got two kids, and we're going to ignore inflation for a minute. They're each going to get a $500,000. Well, you die at 90 and you had your kid at 30, so they're going to be 60. They're either in their peak earning years or they're already financially independent. And while all of us would say, I'm super grateful to inherit a $500,000, many of us can recognize, especially early on in our married relationship or early on as parents or just freshly out of college, $5,000 could have changed the trajectory of my life versus giving me $500,000 when I'm already financially independent. Now, again, we're not being ungrateful, but we're just recognizing that a smaller amount of money 30 years sooner could get us a lot farther than a bunch of money after we're already financially independent. So it's something to think about. The other thing is if we sat those kids down, and I know, Jason, you've had this same conversation. If you sit down with somebody in their 60s and you start to talk about money and you talk about how was money when you were growing up and how are your parents doing financially now, time and time again, the conversation would go to, mom's 90 and she's got $600,000 in her IRA. and she will not spend it. No matter what we tell her, she just can't bring herself to spend that money. And I don't want that to happen for me, you know. And we don't need the money. We tell mom, spend the money, go do the thing you want to do, but she's too old to spend it, you know. So we want to take those lessons from the previous generation and we want to say, how can we not make those mistakes for myself? So spending it on yourself, spending it on charity, giving it away. There, if we agree that a smaller amount of money sooner can go farther in some circumstances, you know, we should figure out a way to do that rather than leave money to people that are already financially independent. So, um, I guess I'm kind of mixing my metaphors maybe a little bit there,
No,
but
I
uh,
love it.
but you should spend that money on you. We say if you don't fly first class, your kids will, right? So we want you to spend the money on you. Oftentimes it's in service to something else. It's in service to making memories with our family members. It's in service to giving it away to charities that we care about. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is, uh, if you wait until you're dead, you do not get to enjoy them. Want spending the money that it took your whole life to save, right? So if we give
Right.
smaller amounts sooner, I get to watch my kids, you know, make different decisions, you know, or I get to watch that charity um, spend the money. And guess what? If I leave a little bit of money to my kids in their 20s that I proved through a financial plan I wasn't going to spend anyway, and they really messed it up, well, I get to teach them lessons or I get to stop giving them money. You know, I get to, rather than leaving them $500,000 and say, I hope you don't, you know,
Right.
gamble this all away on, you know, the sports betting apps that, you know, are pretty soon going to be just pre-downloaded on your phone, I think. Make small mistakes, right? Learn from those mistakes before you get real money. So there's 5 or 6 different ways that we could arrive at the same advice, which would be give that money away in smaller amounts sooner and see what happens.
Yeah, I love everything you said there. And, giving somebody, $15,000 when they're in their 30s, they just got married, they bought a house, they have kids. I mean, even a successful individual who's got a great job, I mean, that money I would assume in most cases, so much more well received for them in their 30s than it would be after they've kind of persevered and gotten through, the gauntlet of life and they've come out the other end. Uh,
Hmm.
so much more usefulness and enjoyment. I love the idea of giving during your lifetime. I think selfishly it's a good thing to do. Like like you said, you get to see, your children or your grandchildren, enjoy this money while you're around. I think that's a great
Hmm.
thing. All right. AI. So you can't get around any conversation or any headline nowadays without talking about AI. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to check your crystal ball and make any huge predictions, but what are your thoughts on AI in the retirement planning, tax planning space? Maybe not for your practice, but for a do-it-yourselfer, or maybe a younger individual who's trying to figure out some planning things in their 20s and 30s. What are your thoughts on AI? Because in my opinion, it's coming a long way. There's a lot of predictions about, where it could be. There's some utopia sorts of conversations. Who knows where this will actually land? But I like asking my guests lately all about AI, just because you can't get anywhere without reading a headline about it.
Yeah, AI is great. You can't put the genie back on the bottle. It's like the internet, right? I mean, there's like before the internet and after the internet. There's going to be before AI and after AI. There's just no escaping it. Even if we shut down every data center in the country, you know, another country is just going to pick up the slack, right? I mean, there's however 8 billion of us. It's inescapable, no matter what we do or what politicians do, and that's just human innovation can't be stopped. Sometimes it slows down, sometimes it takes a wrong turn, but it just never stops. And that AI is just a big part of that. I think from the financial advisor standpoint, and especially in the accounting space, I think AI will allow CPAs and financial advisors to work with more people. So if you own a financial planning firm and you serve 100 clients well, 10 years from now you might be able to serve 200 clients really well. And maybe that'll bring some costs down. Same thing with accountants. If you do 1,500 tax returns now with 3 CPAs, maybe you could do double the amount because AI is going to be fantastic at cross-referencing and doing this, filling out boilerplate forms and things like that. So there's a lot of really great things. As far as do-yourself retirement planning, I think it can be great. I still think you need to bring that ChatGPT plan to an advisor to look at some things because AI is only as good as the prompt. And if I'm the prompt architect, one of the biggest things that can derail my plan is blind spots. We talked earlier, it's really hard to be objective about your own money. It's impossible to be objective about your blind spots. If you knew that they were there, they wouldn't be blind spots. So where the internet has all of the knowledge that's ever existed in the world, AI is also that, where it can solve things broadly because it knows all the rules. It has the CFP manual memorized. It has the entire IRS website memorized. It has infinite and eternal knowledge, but it has no wisdom because it has not solved that for an individual. It can tell you what the rules are broadly, but it can't tell you exactly what to do because it doesn't know you and it's only as good as the prompt and you can't see your own blind spots. So whereas I don't have the entire CFP manual memorized, AI is better at that than I am. I do have the wisdom because I've been walking this journey with clients for 20 years and I've done it hundreds of times. So I can say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Client, here's how it went really badly for another person that I worked with, and I want you to avoid that. That would be a big blind spot that they couldn't prompt this large language model to know about. Or I can say, you want to do it this way. I helped a client do it this way a few years ago, and it worked even better than what you're describing. Should we investigate that? So we have to acknowledge that there's knowledge and wisdom. Financial advisor is never going to win the knowledge game because we don't have the compute. We have wisdom, and AI will never have wisdom because it's not. I don't think artificial general intelligence will, or let alone super intelligence, general intelligence. I don't think that's a thing. Large language model is just really fancy autocomplete. So it's useful and it's fantastic, but I don't think it's going to substitute for humans. AI and autopilot can take off and land a plane. I still want a guy with some gray in his temples sitting behind the steering wheel, right? When I fly. I think a lot of people are going to still be that same way with their retirement plan. There's still going to be people that are fine with Google and fine with AI. There's people that were fine with it before that. They were never going to hire an advisor anyway. So acknowledge and understand knowledge and wisdom. You need both. You can only get one from AI. You need a person that has the wisdom at the end of the day. Maybe we'll get there someday where AI will also have wisdom, but I don't see it because it doesn't have lived experience. So I'm fully biased. I'm a financial advisor. A fool convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. You're going to have a hard time convincing me that AI is a better advisor because I'm an advisor. So that's my blind spot, apparently.
Right. No, I love it. 100%. That's a great breakdown. And I love your point. It can have intelligence, but it can't have wisdom. I think that's a great point on AI. All right. Well, our guest today is Benjamin Brandt. Ben, thanks so much for coming on and joining us. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Thanks.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by Toba Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through Toba Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.